Common wisdom in New York City and the streets of London tells you one thing. Don't fuck with the Albanians.
Points in my life where I had real people trying to kill me. And I'm talking about real people. I'm talking about Albanian gangsters with murder charges.
You've seen them in gangs of London, Taken, and even in Grand Theft Auto 4.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
But what really is the Albanian Mafia? And what's it like being a member? Stay tuned as we take a look inside the life of an Albanian Mafia member. You'd think that the Albanian Mafia operates differently than Cosa Nostra or the Sicilian Mafia, but you'd be wrong. The Albanian Mafia has evolved over the last 80 years, and doesn't just consist of ethnic Albanians. From what we know about their activities, the entire Mafia is made up of families, ranging from Albanians, to Serbians, to Macedonians, and even Greeks. They have clans spread across the world, including Australia, Europe, the United Kingdom, and, more famously, the United States. And they're almost impossible to infiltrate. Even the ones in New York City are said to be too widespread to penetrate, and that's according to the FBI. They're just too secretive and operate with surprising criminal savvy. Just like the Sicilian Mafia, the Albanian crime families rely deeply on honor, trust, and loyalty. They have their own internal laws, which make all other official laws secondary, or even useless. They use a specific term called besa, which literally means faith or oath in Albanian culture. If one person gives another their besa, it means that they verbally bonded themselves with trust. As we mentioned before, the Albanian Mafia doesn't just consist of ethnic Albanians. There's no one unified governing body that tells each family what business to do and how to do it. The Rodaj organization, for example, consists of mostly Albanian Americans and even some Italian Americans. The families in Germany consist of Albanian immigrants from Albania, North Macedonia, and Kosovo. There's no one Albanian Mafia. It's a collection of families with connections to Albania and the Balkans. There have been Albanian crime organizations that have been apprehended in polycriminal activities, human trafficking, drugs, prostitution, racketeering, and more. But what does a typical life in the Albanian crime world look like? Let's take a look. Djedgwtat Lika, better known as Joey Lika, was considered the king of the world of drugs in New York, moving $100 million worth of Turkish dope at one time. In Hoffman and Hedley's Contract Killer, Lika was described as being a frightening member of international crime. He had his mobsters trained and ready to make assassinations against John Gotti, Paul Castellano, or even President Reagan if he wanted them to. He was well known for his dislike of Italians, and they were afraid of him because of his violent nature. Lika used to work alone until 1980. He then joined Cevdet Mustafa, who was one of 4 Albanian exiles who wanted to assassinate Enver Hoxha, an Albanian communist politician. Mustafa ended up failing his mission and shot himself in the head in 1982, so Lika moved on. He continued trafficking heroin into the United States, and the Mafia couldn't do much to stop him. Until 1985, when he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At the time of his sentencing, Lika had transported over $125 million worth of drugs from the Balkans, Yugoslavia, and Turkey, and pumped it into New York, California, Texas, and Illinois. At his trial, Lika was joined by his Albanian relatives. And it's even reported that Rudy Giuliani, who was overseeing the trial, was sent death threats by Lika's father. To try and make the charges go away, Lika issued a $400,000 contract to Giuliani's prosecutors. In a statement later on, Giuliani noted that it was the first time in his life that his life was threatened by a defendant. When you're considered a rival of the Lucchese and Gambino crime families, you know you're not to be messed with. Alex Rodaj began his career in crime as an associate of the Gambino family. He's not the only Albanian who's done this, though, considering that plenty of Albanians have adopted to other crime families in the past. By the 1990s, Rodaj began collaborating with others to form a group, including Albanians and other Cosa Nostra members. The group started out with illegal gambling in Morris Park in Westchester County. Of course, Rodaj was successful, and then he wanted more. In June 2001, he and 6 of his men entered Soccer Fever, a Greek social club that was actually a gambling racket run by two Greek associates of the Lucchesi family. The men were armed and beat one of the two guys on the head with a pistol, scaring the others away. By 2005, Arnold Squitieri, a Gambino family underboss, had had enough. He decided to have a sit-down with the Rudage Corporation at a gas station in New Jersey and arrived there with 20 armed Gambino men, while Rudage arrived with 6. According to the legendary undercover FBI agent Joaquin Garcia, Squitieri told the Albanian mobster, "You took what you took and that's it, or there's going to be a problem." The Gambinos outnumbered the Rudage Corporation 20-6. And Alex's solution? Blow up a gas tank if a gunfight happens. But none of them had to die that day. A year later, all the main players involved in the sit-down were in prison. As far as we know, Dobroshi is currently living in Kosovo, and his wife and 2 children live in Prague, far away from him. But the Kosovo-Albanian crime boss was in the 1990s one of the most powerful heroin and arms smugglers in Europe. He was so prolific, in fact, that by 1993 he was captured in Norway, and in 1994 he began his 14-year sentence in Ulesmos prison for trafficking heroin in Norway as well as Sweden and Denmark. But he couldn't be kept behind bars for too long. He and his associates pulled off a well-coordinated operation in 1997, and he managed to escape from Ulesmos. He chose the Czech Republic as his new place of residence, and instead of living a quiet life, he quickly dominated the Albanian drug mafia there. A mere 2 years later, on February 23, 1999, he was arrested yet again in Prague and sent to a Czech prison. Sometime later, he heard rumors that there was a plan to assassinate him in his prison cell. But before that could happen, Dobroshi successfully extradited himself to Norway to complete the rest of his sentence. According to Bosnian authorities, Nasser Kelmendi was the head of a huge criminal empire. He was known as possibly the biggest drug lord in the Balkans, but he had a violent streak ever since his teenage years. In 1976, when Kelmendi was 19 years old, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison for attempted murder in his hometown of Pec in Serbia. By the 1980s, he was free and smuggling gold and textiles into Kosovo from Turkey. In the 1990s, while the former Yugoslavia was under international sanctions, Kelmendi smuggled oil, tobacco, and drugs. From there, he slowly built his criminal empire. Kelmendi owned many businesses while he was active in the 1990s and early 2000s, including a cigarette factory and several hotels. The Balkan crime boss at one point was so powerful that Interpol stated that his organization had influence in Montenegro, Kosovo, Macedonia, Croatia, Serbia, Germany, and the United States.